on this episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists.
Our unconscious mind also cannot process it. It is unable to process negatives, can'ts, won'ts, don'ts. But its job is to prove us right. So if you're having these thoughts, even in a joking manner about yourself, you are programming your mind to find those opportunities to say, see, that's right. You are lazy. You are clumsy. You do stumble on your words. Whatever it is you have put out there, your mind will prove it and find the opportunities to say, see, I told you so. There's 4 things that we need to do in order to have a change in our life. We need to release any limiting beliefs, negative emotions, fears, insecurities. We have to release, we have to envision the future, we have to take action and maintain focus.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of A Tale of Two Hygienists podcast, episode number 434. I'm your host, Andrew Johnston, and thank you so much for joining us today. On this episode, we brought back fan favorite Heather McGuire. We talk a little bit about why we limit ourselves. I think that many of you out there, especially the ones that are going through some burnout or maybe fighting some kind of just maybe unrest with what you're doing, I think you're all looking for that next thing. And maybe that's a career change. Maybe it's a new hobby. Maybe it's learning a new skill, like learning a new language or something like that. I mean, whatever it might be, I think many of you won't actually be able to take those steps. Like if we're being really honest with ourselves for a quick second, we're in this situation where we're not really feeling good about something. We maybe know how to identify it, or maybe we don't. And then when it comes to taking the plunge, a lot of us chicken out. We won't actually do that. And why the heck not? So I see it time and time again. People I really care about, people who are really amazing at something, just petrified to do the right thing, which is taking the next step. And there's lots of reasons why. I don't think, I kind of wish in this episode that you'd hear the answer to why you specifically aren't taking that next step, but that's not what you're going to hear. Instead, it's more about learning about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and what I think, in my opinion, more importantly, an NLP coach could do for you. I really expect this episode to impact most of you out there because there's so much power in the ability to accept change, to adapt, to remove the self-limiters that we have. And Heather speaks a lot about that. We're also joined by our new co-host, Annie Walters. So I hope that you give her a warm welcome. She doesn't have a work email address yet, and I don't know that she'll have a Tale of Two Hygienists email address, but she'll probably have an Endeavor Business Media email address that I'll put in the show notes at one point whenever we get that. At the time of recording this, she doesn't have one yet, but just be on the lookout for that. If you wanted to shoot her a message, of course, you can always find her on social media and through the RDH magazine sites. Next week, we keep working on our minds and also a mini throwback to January and February series on myofunctional therapy. We welcome in Dave Henriksen, who talks to us about taking the next step, going to the next level from learning a skill, learning a trait, learning something new, and then turning it into a full-time job and a new revenue source. So Dave hung up the scalers, I think a couple years ago, he said, and is now practicing full-time as a myofunctional therapist. But more importantly for him, he's helping others to take that same leap that he took from being trained, knowing what to do, and then opening up their own practice. It's really cool what he's doing. He talks a lot about what kind of person it takes to do that. And then piggybacking on the episode that you're going to hear today with Heather, that growth mindset that is needed to be successful. So make sure you come back for that one, as it is a good kind of 1-2 punch with the episode today. Under One Roof is coming up quick. I believe Annie actually will be at CDA South, I think is what's coming up. The meeting that's coming up here next week or the week after. She will probably be close to the Endeavor Business Media booth if you wanted to try and find her. Again, you can shoot her a message on social media if you can find her there. And then also, I know the ads are up this month for RDH Educator and RDH Evolution. I believe I'm going to be attending both of those things, as well as RDH Under One Roof, the actual meeting. If you're going and you want to set up some time to do some podcasting with me, we are always looking for guests. So just shoot me an email, andrew@ataleoftwohygienists.com. I've actually received several emails in the last 2 weeks. I'm not really sure what's going on, why everyone's all of a sudden emailing me, but I really appreciate it. It's going to give us some really good content. We have a whole sleep series coming up. And then someone else emailed me about like a different take on sleep. And so there's just, and also airway, there's just so many really good things coming up, but it's because you guys are messaging us. You guys are letting us know what you want. And thank you very much for the people that are volunteering their time to do this with us. So that's it for this week. Special thank you to this week's guest, Heather McGuire. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with her.
A tale of two hygienists.
And you tricked me last time by saying we're hitting record and we're not really recording yet. We're just having small talk, because the very first thing on episode 1 talks about my silly nickname.
Heather Feather, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You were like, oh, this is just icebreakers. This is just us talking. Sure. This isn't real yet.
I lied to you?
And then you're like,
that doesn't sound like me.
Very first thing is childhood nicknames. And I was like, oh, cool. So I don't trust if that record button's on, it is more than likely going to go on air.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, listeners, this is Heather Feather coming live to you from. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, look, you caught me. I'm lying to you now too. We're going to keep that one in. Heather, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me back.
We have Annie also. Annie, thanks for joining on the podcast again.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. All right. So listeners, if you listened to us 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation with Heather and Trish, and we talked about a lot of different things. That was a hard one to title, just because we kind of jumped all over the place from, I really want to know, kind of about coaching style, like how do you get people motivated, how do you do these things? And then it ended up being a kind of a conversation where we, and we love Trish, but we kind of ignored Trish for a little while and focused on Heather. And we kind of alluded to the fact that, the things that we do, the way that we act, the things that we say, how we say them, all of that stuff matters. And so I want to have a continuation of that conversation today. Were we on air, Heather, when I said something and you're like, see, you said that, and that wasn't on air, was it?
No, it didn't make the cut. So
Darn.
It's there, but you conveniently edited yourself out of that one.
That was so convenient of me to do. But the reason why I bring that up though is because even people who may speak for a living or on podcasts for a living or do all these things, we say a lot of things subconsciously, unconsciously, subconsciously that we don't necessarily think that we mean, but we really do mean. And so I wanted to kind of just, maybe that's where we could start today is talking about why do people say what they say? And then we'll move into kind of a deeper conversation about some other things. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
So let's jump into it. So when people have like negative talk, or people have limiting beliefs, I think it's something that you had said. Why do we do that? Why are we saying that about ourselves?
So you mentioned unconscious mind, subconscious mind. They're the same. It's, two different words for the same meaning. We have a conscious mind and our unconscious mind. And we talked a little bit on the last episode. I'm a master practitioner of neuro-linguistics programming, mental and emotional release, and hypnosis, as well as all of my clinical and dental background as well. So I've spent the last 2.5 years studying the unconscious mind. And to me, and I feel like I always date myself with you, because last time I talked about a jukebox and you were like, what is that? The Matrix. I'm hoping that some listeners are familiar with The Matrix.
It's a movie, right?
In how like the codes come down across the screen and several things. Like if you haven't seen the movie, you've at least seen an image or a meme of The Matrix. Okay. So we get downloaded with 2 million bits of information per second. So our conscious mind cannot absorb 2 million bits of information. And if you just take this right now, where I'm looking at a computer screen, I'm listening to you, I'm listening to my own voice, I can hear the birds chirping outside, I can feel my skin feels my clothes, my organs are running. There is all of these things going at the same time. And that's 2 million bits of information going into our unconscious mind. Our conscious mind only processes 126 of that 2 million. So what happens to the rest of it? It gets generalized, distorted, and deleted and filed in our unconscious mind. And there's so many times with life on repeat or experiences on repeat that our unconscious mind's role is to prove us right. It's very literal, and its role is to prove us right. So when we see things to ourselves that maybe we had heard, somebody had told us, maybe, I was always picked on in school. I never had upper body strength and I had too much lower body weight, so I could never climb a rope. I was never picked in gym class. I started having these limiting beliefs about myself, or what the mean kids would call me in school. And I heard it over and over, and it consciously, I might not have every single memory of it, but I have it stored in my unconscious mind. So now by default, I've been programmed or conditioned to think this way. And because these experiences live in our unconscious mind, and it's its job to prove us right. So if I'm going to constantly say things like, I'm clumsy, I'm stupid, I don't speak well, our unconscious mind also cannot process, it is unable to process negatives, can'ts, won'ts, don'ts. But its job is to prove us right. So if you're having these thoughts, even in a joking manner about yourself, you are programming your mind to find those opportunities to say, see, that's right. You are lazy. You are clumsy. You do stumble on your words. Whatever it is you have put out there, your mind will prove it and find the opportunities to say, see, I told you so.
Do you feel like it's a weighted balance between positive and negative? So for instance, if I, had a parent who just like gushed over me like, oh my gosh, Andrew, you can do no wrong. And then like, positive, will that then be kind of my default, or is it work more like the one negative review out of 100 and I'm just like zeroed on the negative one?
I think there's a balance of both. We do, as humans, tend to fill in the white spaces and go towards the negative. We're going to remember the negative more than the positive. And that's one little language tip that you can do when you're having conversations with people, is to remove the word but and change it to and. If I tell you all of these beautiful, lovely things about you, you look great today, black is an amazing color on you, it's a great shirt, but those shoes, you're going to go back and remember the but. You're going to remove the word but, negates everything prior. So you're going to remember, oh, those shoes. And every time you put on those shoes, you're going to look at them and you're going to wonder what other people are going to think about you, because I was the one who said, oh, those shoes. So you can get all the positive, and one but can actually change that a little bit.
I've always said the subconscious is always listening, and everything you've said is just so validating to that. And it's amazing the things that we say and how we believe them and how you went into that. Do you feel that there's any correlation with manifesting? Like when you start like manifesting different things, like can that like retrain different things that we believe? I may be getting ahead of myself here as far as like how to retrain some of that, the subconscious beliefs that we've told ourselves.
Yes. So I try to always balance science and woo-wooey, right? Because
for sure.
And I don't know how to say it any other way than my woo-wooey
I think
side.
we all understand it's like woo-woo. Yeah.
Because, I'm a hygienist. I'm founded in science.
Yep.
So it's a very fine line for me to be like, oh, just manifest it and say all these I ams and your life will be great. And that's what drew me to NLP, neuro-linguistics programming, is because it is scientifically proven ways to get into the unconscious mind and reprogram those thoughts. And the neurons that wire together fire together. So if I can create new neural pathways in my brain, I can create different results. And when you work with an NLP coach, they are trained in language to know exactly what to say to pull those things out of help you pull those unconscious beliefs out to rewire and fire those neurons together. So manifestation in a vision board, yes, there is actually a part of our brains, the reticular activating system. If you tell your mind, if you decide one day I'm going to buy a bright red sports car, and you figure it out, you have exactly the one you want to buy. And all of a sudden you're going to see, or maybe you did already just go buy that bright red sports car because you think you're so unique and it's the greatest thing. And then all of a sudden you're driving in it and you're like, there's my car, there's my car. You see it, the same car that you just bought. It's because you have turned on that portion of your brain to then see and find your desired results. And you can dig into it. It's actually really cool. So that's where vision boards in manifestation come, with activating your reticular activating system. Now, how do you do that? You can put all the pictures up and you can put this life you want to have, and you have to have an action plan to get there. It's like GPS coordinates in your phone is the easiest way I find to explain this to my clients. Is if I want to get, Annie, if I want to get to your house, I have no idea where you live, but you could give me your address and I could put it into Google Maps and I would arrive at your house. I may have road closures, detours, accidents, and I'm going to reroute, but I will eventually, if I stay on the path, get to your house. Vision boards, manifestations work that way. Your mind needs to know, it needs a clear vision of the future for where it wants to go. And then your unconscious mind's job is to prove you right. So it's going to reroute you and direct you every way it can to get to where you want to be. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
It's like it helps you with like little decisions that you might not necessarily be super paying attention to, but it'll help you get to where you need to go eventually.
Yes. So I took a really cool, one of my very first personal growth and development courses I took years ago. There was about 80 of us in the class. We all had to stand up on one side of the room. And the goal was to get to the other side of this conference room. Simple goal, right? I want to get from here to there. The challenge was you could not do what anybody else in front of you had done. So the first person took the path of least resistance and just walked. The second person ran. The third person skipped, because these are all the things that we know of how to get from one side of the room to the other. So now I'm like down in the 70s and I'm starting to sweat. I'm like, I don't know how to get across the room because everybody did everything. And I think we do that a lot when we're trying to change careers or we're trying to find a new path in life. Is like, everybody's always has done it before. I don't know how to do these things. But when you have that vision board, that manifestation, that clear vision of the future of, okay, it's almost my turn and I got to get to the other side of the room, the more opportunities and more things, more ideas come your way, because we all got to the other side of the room. There were people doing like what is it when you lay on your, like the
worm?
The worm. Like there were people doing all kinds of crazy things, but we all got from one side of the room to the other by not doing the same thing that somebody else in front of us had done. So that's kind of how, in my opinion anyways, you can activate that reticular activating system by using vision boards, manifestation, and a clear vision of the future.
Is there ever like a situation where you're like, look, that is too big of a goal or too small of a goal to put on a vision board? Like, I want to earn $10 million in by the time I'm 60 or whatever. Is that just too ridiculous?
I don't think so. And the best way for me to relate these things is by personal stories. When I left clinical hygiene, I went on the vendor partner side and I worked for Pharma for a couple of years. And 2 weeks after I had hired in, right from the chair, right to my very first national sales meeting, I felt like I was teleported into an entirely different world. I am at, and if you've never been to a national sales meeting, they're like the Oscars. Everybody, the women were just beautifully dressed, hair done, makeup done, suits, like beautiful, beautiful people. So, and you're having a nice dinner and there's music and you get to the awards portion of it and your name's called and it's in lights in the back of the stage. And like I said, music's playing and you walk up on stage and you collect your trophy. And, I sat there awestruck and I said, I am going to cross the stage next year. I don't know how to sell. I don't really know much about anything. I don't even know why my boss hired me, but I am going to cross the stage. So I envisioned myself in the future. I envisioned what national sales meeting for the next year was going to look like. I looked at what I was going to wear. I was going to have on a white dress and red high heels. I picked out that image and I saw my name behind me in lights. I was almost looking at myself on stage. And every night, I kid you not, every night when I was falling asleep, I would think of that vision of myself. I knew what the trophy looked like. It was around a sphere. So I had in my vision, I had the base or the circle part in my right hand and I was holding the base in the left hand and shoulders back and light shined on me and I felt it. I really associated myself into that image and I did it. And I finished my first year in my first ever sales role, number 5 out of about 120 account managers. And the coolest part about it is when I got on stage and I held my trophy in my white dress and my bright red high heels, I looked out and I had felt like I had been there so many times before. I was like, I've been here. I've done this. It was a moment of, it was so real. And it was just a moment of like, I've done that. I knew I was going to be there. So no, I don't think anything's too big or too small because my big goal was to win President's Club. My small goal was to wear red high heels in front of 200 people. Like that's a bold thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my small goal. So no, I don't think anything's too big or too small. It's where do you want to go in your life or your career?
So how important do you think it is to obviously visualize, but to constantly be reminding your unconscious mind or like to constantly be seeing, like, obviously that's where vision boards come from. But when I think about obviously like goal setting and visualizing where you want to go and like without getting discouraged, or how do we continually remind ourselves of where we're headed?
For me, that is with working with a coach. All of the success I have had in my personal and professional life, I contribute to working with a coach. There's 4 things that we need to do in order to have a change in our life. We need to release any limiting beliefs, negative emotions, fears, insecurities. We have to release, we have to envision the future, we have to take action and maintain focus. Exactly what you just said. By myself, those things are hard. I need a coach. And for me, again, my wheelhouse and where I found the best success in my life is with an NLP coach, is to help me release those negative emotions and limiting beliefs that are standing in my way from getting from this side of the bridge to the other side of the bridge. So, and that's where they're trained. I'm trained in language to pull out those unconscious beliefs and memories to help you make that new neural pathway. So I have to release those things. I work with a coach to make my vision of the future. Put it on paper and set the goals of the action that I need to take to get there. Because that's number 3, is I have to take the action. And then working with a coach helps me maintain that focus because I'm meeting with somebody weekly or bi-weekly who is going to help keep me accountable to the action I said I wanted to achieve.
I would love to maybe take that first one just like a little bit step by step, because I feel like I have a lot of limiting beliefs. I think a lot of people have limiting beliefs. And it's nice to be able to be like, hey, well, we need to get rid of these things that are holding us back. Cool. But how do you do that? I mean, it can't be so much as, well, just replace this word with that word, right?
It can and it can't. So, sometimes people say, oh, it took me 20 years to stop smoking. No, it took you 20 years worth of experiences to decide in that moment that you wanted to stop smoking. Okay. It took me X amount of years to stop drinking, to stop eating sugar, whatever it is. Change happens in an instant, but you need enough experiences up till that instant in order to get you into the place to change. So again, working with somebody who studies the unconscious mind knows how to, and it's a lot to go into in a half-hour podcast. I mean, breakthrough sessions to really get to the core of it can last anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. And we go through and I'm skilled in listening to what you say beyond your words to reframe it or scratch that record, the CD, because Andrew doesn't know what records are, scratch that CD so that pattern no longer plays for you. So I don't have a simple answer to give you as far as that. I think I shared with you in the past, I had a fear of water. I had this terrible fear. I didn't understand why. I had no conscious memory of why I was afraid of water over my waist. I was good in a pool in the ocean as long as it was just waist high. Anything over than that, panic attacks, couldn't breathe, had to get out of the water. I had went on a trip with my husband to the Bahamas a couple years ago, and he is like a fish, and all he wanted to do was go on this catamaran and go snorkeling. Consciously, I'm telling myself, I'm going to go snorkeling. I'm going to go snorkeling. I'm going to hype myself up because I'm going to do this. Put my life jacket on, I walk down the ladder, water hits my chest. I can't breathe. I am holding on to the life preserver rope. I didn't even go far enough out to get to the life raft. I'm holding onto the rope for dear life, and I've got to get out of the water because I'm so full of fear and panic. My limiting belief of I'm going to drown. I can't do this. I can't be in water. So I hoist my body up out of the water on this really flimsy little ladder, look like a fool in front of a bunch of my work colleagues because I'm crying because I was in the water and it, touched my neck. So through my work with my coach, we decided to release that because it's something I do want to do. We're going to the Bahamas again in the end of this month, in the end of May, and I do want to scuba dive or snorkel. And I no longer want to live in this fear of I can't do this or I don't want to. Okay. So I have to get that, my conscious and unconscious mind, I have to get them in alignment because there's something in there blocking me. So with my coach, we go through, there's, like I said, scientifically proven techniques and specific scripts that you go through that use language and your memories and scratch that CD so that fear, that limiting belief no longer plays. So we went through this technique together. We were at actually one of our training seminars. And as soon as it was done, I had this overwhelming urge to go put my bathing suit on. And I did. I went up to my room, came down to the pool, and I walked the whole pool, and it was 8 feet deep at the end. And I couldn't even believe it. As it was coming up, there was no fear. I was laughing. I was like, I can't believe I kept yelling, I can't touch. Because I was so shocked that my feet were not on the ground. So fast forward a little bit after I was, super excited to do this. And I've been in water a few other times. Fear is gone. But I had to ask my mom because there was a vision that had came up to me while I was going through the technique that I had been trapped underwater, something I consciously did have no memory of. My mom, bless her sweet little soul, if she ever listens to this, says, oh yeah, haha, you were about 2 or 3 years old and you were in the pool with Dad and I, and we got out for a smoke and a sandwich. And I was in one of those little inner tubes, and they turned around and I was butt up in this little inner tube, and I was head to my waist underwater. that was stored in my unconscious mind. I have no conscious memory at 44 years old that I was trapped underwater when I was a toddler. Mom never chose to share that story with me until I asked.
Convenient, yeah.
Right. So now what my coach did, and I didn't even have to go back and have this traumatic experience relived. I just kind of like went over it, released that, like it just like popped a balloon. And then I showed up more of this is who I am. It wasn't that I changed. It was just like I no longer was blocked by that fear. So I've been in water. I'm happy. I'm excited to go in water again. And it's all from really working with somebody to know what those unconscious beliefs are stored as, and then saying, dude, I don't want them anymore. Like, release it.
I was just going to say that in order to move forward, like putting value on releasing those and breaking down, because it sounds like we really can't move forward. And as far as when we make our vision board in the direction that we're going, if those limiting beliefs are there, the chances of being able to get where we want to go is much smaller.
Exactly. That is exactly right, Annie.
How often are a lot of these limiting beliefs like traumatic, like your experience, versus a lot more subtle?
So can't even the little subtle ones be traumatic?
It's amazing that the body...
Hold on, let's talk about that word for a minute.
The brain like is almost like protecting you by like making you not remember it. But then it's also like coming, but then our behaviors and like your example, like you were fearful of this water going above your waist, but the body is trying to somewhat protect you by keeping you from remembering that traumatic event. Is that correct?
Yes, but it's just a memory that's stored, right? So it could be something a little bit more simpler than not being like, that was a phobia release that I did. That was a big one. The limiting beliefs are, I'm not smart enough. I'm too much of this, or I'm too little of that, right? Like those things can be equally as devastating to our lives. Because if I have this desire, maybe I'm an entrepreneur, maybe I'm a hygienist, and I want to start my own business. I want to do something bigger and greater, but I have that small voice in my head that's saying, I can't do this. I've never been good at math, so I can't run my own business, right? That's a limiting belief that is going to keep you stuck. And you may not be physically stuck underwater, but metaphorically, you're stuck underwater by having that one belief system that says, I can't do this because.
Do you find that hygienists are maybe more so than the general population, a group of individuals who have more limiting beliefs than others? I feel like we beat ourselves up all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that just comes from our nature of, it does, like wanting, I don't know if it's that like somewhat type A personality, but kind of just striving for perfection. And I agree. I feel like we do beat ourselves up all the time and set this really high standard, I guess.
Also seeking approval from everybody, right? Our doctors, our patients, and our coworkers, like everyone. We're trying to always please everybody.
Yes.
And it's almost that fear a little bit of, if I tell this patient this, then they're going to get mad at me, or they're going to have this reaction.
They won't like me.
Or if they won't like me. If I tell my doctor something that maybe he doesn't agree in, if I'm detecting something, then that's that small feeling of like, oh, maybe I don't know how to read an x-ray. Maybe I don't know actually what I'm doing. And we start that downward spiral of sabotaging ourselves. That's where self-sabotage comes in. And then you're playing small. One of my mentors tells me all the time, Heather, stop playing small and get out of the sandbox. Because we think that to ourselves. So that's where our communication to ourselves, we can get in our own way to have specific and desired outcomes. So yes, a vision board, and you have to have those self-sabotaging behaviors, limiting beliefs released before you really can have that clear vision of action forward.
You have to clear out everything else before you can move forward.
Otherwise, your unconscious mind's going,
Right.
You know, I was 100 pounds heavier. I've lost 100 pounds in the last 4 years. When I sat there and looked at myself in the mirror and told myself, you're skinny, you're thin, you're healthy, I can't believe that, because it's like, that wasn't true. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't going to manifest myself into a healthy body. I had to get rid of things that were keeping me, my beliefs, good, bad, and indifferent, around food, around why I was holding the extra weight. I had to release all of that. Now I can look in the mirror and be like, you are healthy because I am. You know, so your unconscious and conscious mind have to be in alignment in order for your clear path forward to allow you to take action and maintain that focus.
I feel like what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, okay, like there are some things that we can do on our own, but really it sounds like we need help. Like we need a coach. And my kind of issue sometimes with coaches is it's really hard to find a good qualified one. And I was hoping maybe you could speak to a little bit about that. Like if we're looking for someone that's credible and qualified, how do we find them?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of biased to NLP coaches. So you could just search on that. You can look on LinkedIn. But really, to me, what's important is I want to know, who are you coached by? So what are you doing as a coach for your own personal growth and development? How long ago was your last certification? Like, we think of it this way. We're up on our CEs. We have to renew our license all the time. Now, there's not a licensing board for coaches, which sometimes gives a bad rap, because you can just be so woo-wooey and call yourself a life coach, and that's it. So I would want to know, first of all, your credentials to be able to guide me, okay? And get specific on what area of life you want to work in and find that coach. Life coach is too broad. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to fix my whole entire life today. There is one thing that you're working on that is going to be the release to help trickle down to all the other aspects of your life. So when I was in sales, I was trending, my last year in, I was trending to be the number one account manager. I had a lot of life happen to me during the last quarter of that year. And I, at one point, just couldn't even get out of bed. I was done. I was surrendering and said, I don't care. I don't want anything I've worked for. And then that small voice inside of my head said, that's not true. You've got to help yourself. You got to get out of your own way. So I hired a sales coach because I needed help to get my career back on path. I wasn't going to hire a life coach to say, get me out of bed. I hired a sales coach. And he said, what's your biggest problem? What's your biggest barrier right now to get you, preventing you from getting to number one? And I said, I just had my 4th miscarriage and I can't get out of bed. Like, I can't. He's a sales coach, but his first goal for me was, you need to be showered and dressed and in your car by 8 a.m. and send me a selfie with today's date handwritten on a paper. Right? Because he helped me because I said, this is where I wanted to go. And yet I'm stuck in bed. So we had to create small steps forward. And the first step was, get out of bed, Heather. Right? So, and he was coached by a really, really successful coach, a very well-known coach. And he helped me get to my goals. And I got to number one. So if I'm looking for a coach, who have you been trained by? What certifications? You don't have a license, but what certifications do you hold? And what successes do you have in your life? And not just the Instagram, Facebook ones, right? Like, what true successes do you have in your life? Because I want to model successful behavior.
I really hope people listen to that and actually follow through with that, because that is such great advice. Heather, of course, we ran out of time yet again. Didn't get to half of our questions we were supposed to cover. So audience, we apologize. Heather's going to come back. I mean, I hope you'll come back, right, Heather? We should talk about that before
whenever you ask.
Committed you to do it.
Whenever. You got a lot of things to say, Andrew.
And I love it. And I'm sure everyone loves it. If someone wanted to reach out to you, maybe get more clarification on how to find a good coach, maybe enlist your services, how can they reach you? How can they find you?
Sure. My website is MCG Coaching, like my last name, McGuire, mcgcoaching.com. There's a link there that you can book a 30-minute consultation with me. If I am not the right person for your wheel of life, I would have somebody to refer you to. Facebook and LinkedIn is Heather McGuire, RDH, and Heather at mcgcoaching.com is my email. I try to keep things pretty simple.
Love it. Heather, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah, this is a tale, oh yeah, a tale of two hygienists. So there might be only one, bringing the best of dental knowledge, and we do it all with ease. We cover oral health and screening, and preventing gum disease. We're gonna do a lot of learning, and have a little bit of fun working at the dentist. A tale of two hygienists.